Going from doing marketing to leading marketing can be a really hard transition, and I'm going to show you exactly how to do that today. If you're a marketer who's going from an execution role and you're trying to step into a marketing leadership role or a fractional CMO role, you're going to like today's video because I'm going to walk you through exactly what you should be doing as a CMO, how you can use one filter that I use daily to know if you're focused on the right work or work that you shouldn't be doing, and how you can actually make the transition from being a doer to leading marketing. So let's get into it. Okay, so the number one thing that causes the problems here and makes it really hard to go from doing marketing to leading marketing is operating without a real clarity around what a CMO actually does and doesn't do. So I'm going to break that down for you and show you the 4 areas that a CMO focuses on so that you have clarity around what you should be doing as a marketing leader. Okay, so number 1 is strategy. So as a CMO, we are constantly creating strategy and guiding strategy, making sure there is a plan tied to measurable goals. So what does this mean? This means you decide what marketing channels you use and why, what your core messaging or positioning is for your offers or campaigns, what campaigns you're doing and what those should look like and how long they should be and what your offers should be, and then how all the pieces of marketing connect. So what you're doing, kind of think about this here, is you're doing the thinking and the decision making around all of that, not the actual building or execution. So I'll give you a couple of examples here. If a client comes to you and says, I want to start on TikTok, should we be doing TikTok? An executor would say something like, yeah, sure, let's try, or sure, I can go test that out, right? As a CMO, your job is to ask yourself, does TikTok align with our strategy, with our bigger picture goals? Is our audience actually there? Do we have the resources to execute on this effectively? Or are we actually taking away from doing something else that's going to move the needle in a much bigger way? So can you see the difference there? One is an order taker and a little bit of a yes man. The other is asking the right questions and making sure that marketing doesn't turn into a department that is busy for busy's sake. Because that happens a lot. I see that in so many clients I come into where there's a lot going on and there's probably like 20% of the things that are actually moving the needle. Okay, number 2, resource allocation. So we're always looking at team, time, and money. And where are we spending all of those? So we are making budget decisions. Where do we want to spend our money? Where do we want to save our money? We're looking at team decisions. So who should be on the team and why? What roles are really important that are connected to our bigger picture goals and our overarching marketing strategy? Because those go hand in hand. We can't have a marketing strategy that's too big for the size of team that we have. And we want to make sure that we have the right skill set on the team so that we can actually execute on that strategy in a really great way. So we're getting the results that we know are possible for our clients. Then we're looking at time and resourcing and what channels, what spaces, what initiatives are we actually spending time on? And is this the right thing? Is this the right stuff to be focusing on so that we can actually move the needle, right? So an example here, you might be analyzing a client's budget and seeing, okay, wow, they're actually spending like a really good portion of their monthly budget on YouTube production and editing and all of these things. And actually what is coming out of that as far as ROI and results for the business is not proportionate to the amount of spend in terms of budget and team time and things like that. So you might make a recommendation as the CMO, hey, we should pull back here, or we should cut this entirely and shift focus over here, because this one small thing is driving a mass amount of results. And if we could pour fuel on the fire, we are going to see that investment of time and money come back to us exponentially. That's the kind of decisions you're going to be making as a CMO. The third big area of responsibility as a CMO is accountability. So we are setting goals for marketing and then trickling that goals through the team. So internal team members, contractors, agencies, and making sure that we are guiding them in terms of making sure they know what the strategy is, what their individual goals are for their channel, and ensuring that they're actually hitting those goals. So you're going to be deciding across marketing and for every individual channel and tactic and initiative, what does success look like? What are we measuring and why? Are we on track? And if we're not on track, what do we change? So I'll give you a couple of examples here. So let's just say you're doing a launch and your paid ads are not performing. Obviously, we're going to work with our contractor, work with our agency, but if you're continually seeing the same challenges time and time again, your decision as a CMO might be to make a recommendation that your client switches agencies, or maybe they bring that expertise in-house, right? Another example here would be if, let's say, your content creator in-house is not performing. Maybe since they were brought into the company, you've seen the social metrics kind of tank. Well, you might be recommending to your client that that's not the right hire. Or maybe you're coming in and analyzing that and saying like, oh, you have this person in this role and I really think they're not the right fit. So maybe they get shifted into another role, or maybe you swap out the role entirely. Now, I want to make something clear before I move on to the next one here. You are not doing the hands-on optimization. So if there's something that needs changing, something that needs shifting, we're setting the direction, we're giving the goals and recommendations and holding people accountable for results. All right, the last thing here is looking at high-level metrics and decisions and seeing patterns and using those to guide our strategy. So this is the thinking layer that happens. And what this can look like is always having a 30,000 foot view on marketing and looking at the strategy and results and constantly checking in and saying, okay, are we focused on the right things? Are we moving the needle in the right direction? And really looking at the metrics across marketing and looking for patterns. Okay, when we do this one thing over here, is there a ripple effect across our other channels? Or what is the impact of this new campaign that we've tried? And making sure that you're continually zooming in and zooming out as a leader when you're looking at data and decisions and the strategy and using that to guide where you're going next. All right, this would not be complete if I didn't talk about what a CMO does not do. So a CMO does not write copy, design assets, build landing pages, run ads, post content, project manage, or do any execution. If you're spending your time doing those things, you're not in the CMO seat. And there's nothing wrong. We still need people to do marketing. But if you're trying to move from doing marketing to leading marketing, we have to have a clear boundary around those executional components of the work and make sure we're not doing those. Okay, I'm going to tell you about this filter that I use on a daily basis to make sure that I am continually staying in my leadership seat and not slipping back into doing, because it can be really easy to do that. So the one filter I use is, would a CMO do this? And sometimes I'll even think about a company like Disney or Lululemon, like a big company that has a true, fully built out marketing department, because that really puts me in the right frame of mind. Would a CMO of Disney be doing this? Are they going to be writing social captions? No. Are they going to be filtering through resumes to hire for, a new marketing role? No. What might they do? They might look at social media as a whole and the impact of social on the business and the brand and brand awareness, right? Is the marketing team doing the right things and moving the needles, right? That's essentially what the CMO is doing, is the 30,000 foot view of the company. So I find that filter so helpful. And I do find, if you're ever sitting there wondering, a good indicator is that 80% of the time, the answer is that you're kind of slipping into gray area that you shouldn't be in. So I want to dive a little bit more into 3 things that you are going to start doing that will be new to you if you're a doer shifting into leading. New-ish, let's say. So they are delegating, setting boundaries, and advising your clients. So let's dive into all of those. When you shift into leading, you're going to need to delegate a lot more than you're probably used to. And you're going to get used to it the more you go around what is that point that you take something to, whether it's a project or a strategy. Where is that point where you pass things off? And that will start to be more natural as you go. Then when it comes to boundaries, you're going to need to get really good at setting boundaries, because it can sometimes take clients time to wrap their head around, if they've never had a CMO, what is that role versus another role on the team. And you might get asked to do things that are more in line with a project manager or marketing manager. And it's really important to get comfortable having those conversations and holding your boundaries around your role. Otherwise, you're just going to end up burning out and way overworking for your clients. And you'll be sitting there thinking like, I thought this was going to be a great business model and I'm so tired. Trust me, because I've been there. All right, advising. You're going to go from being this person who's an order taker. And if you're a confident person, maybe you've been speaking your opinion and sharing your thoughts, but you're going to go from being an order taker to being an advisor to your clients. And the way I like to see it is we're sitting beside our clients. We're not below our clients. We're sitting beside our clients saying, hey, this is what is in the best interest of you and your company. And I say this from a place of having years and years of marketing experience. And this is my recommendation. And sometimes that means going against something that they think is good or making a recommendation that's different than what they want to do. All right. So before I wrap this up, I'm going to give you a quick framework to start jumping into this work now so you can start today shifting from doing to leading. And step one is you're going to audit your current work. You're going to spend a week or two tracking your time. Write down absolutely everything. I know that's not fun, but trust me, this exercise is going to really give you clarity on where you're spending your time and what is in the CMO bucket and what is not. So we should be writing down absolutely everything. And we're going to go back and look through that list and circle anything that is not in the CMO bucket. So anytime you were writing or designing or project managing or really just getting too in the weeds, circle it. And you'd be surprised because I see this so often and marketers are spending a large portion of their time in places that they shouldn't be and then wondering why they're burnt out. Step number 2 is you're going to identify what you're going to delegate or stop. So you're going to look through the list and for each task, ask yourself, is there someone on my client's team that can do this? Should someone else do this? Or should this thing just stop? Is this even important? Is this moving the needle? So some things you'll end up delegating to a team member. Some things you will recommend that you need to bring in a team member or an agency or contractor. And then some things you will stop doing entirely because you'll see they don't actually matter. So this is going to free up a lot of your time and take you from being someone who's doing to actually leading and thinking and advising. So the value is attached to the outcomes that you can drive through your leadership, not the actual hours you're putting in and the deliverables that you're giving to the client. Step 3, you're going to have a conversation with your client about this. And I know you're sitting there thinking like, oh, how do I do this? And this is going to feel awkward and uncomfortable and oh my gosh. And here's what I'm going to say is this doesn't need to be this big dramatic like, oh my gosh, we need to have a conversation and don't over explain. This is how I would position it. And you can say, look, I did an audit because I was starting to feel quite underwater. And I knew like for me, that's an indicator that I am going outside of my scope that I should be in as your CMO. So I looked at things and here are some gaps I'm seeing on the team. And I always like to come to these conversations with a solution or a way to solve the problem instead of just dumping it on their lap. And I like to give them options because sometimes there isn't really a great option. So it's about walking through the variety of different ways you can go and the pros and cons of each approach. So for example, let's say you're trying to get something off your plate and there's actually nobody to do it and they might not have budget to do it. What you're going to say is, look, like we can't do this. There's no one to do this. And it's actually not really moving the needle. Like we could shift over here and we're going to have a much bigger impact. So there might be instances where you can cut something, but it allows you to focus on something else and do better over there. Or we get creative. Like maybe there's something else that can be shifted. Something could be reallocated. There's so much right now with AI that is speeding up and saving people time. So maybe there's some creative solutions there for you. It's going to be different based on what the work is that you are trying to offload and the team components and budget and all sorts of things. So have the conversation. I would say just keep it short. It doesn't have to be dramatic and it doesn't have to be scary. All right. The last thing that we're going to do is we are going to remember to use the filter that I gave you earlier. Would a CMO do this. When we use that filter, again, that's going to be our cue of should I be doing this or should I not be doing this? Because it's much easier to say no to a request or draw that boundary right away rather than back ourselves out of work that we've been doing for too long. Much easier. So we're going to start to use that filter every day, every week inside of our businesses with our clients. All right. So what I want you to know is this is not about being rigid or having extreme boundaries or not helping out and not being a team player. It's about being helpful in a different way. Less doing, less value attached to your output and more value attached to the clarity that you bring, the leadership that you bring, the decisions you help make, and ultimately at the end of the day, the results that all of that drives. And this is exactly how you're going to make the jump from being a marketer who can charge 4 or 5K per month to 15K plus, because clients will not pay that for someone who is executing, but they will pay that for someone who is a leader and who is guiding the strategy and ultimately the outcomes and direction of their company. Now, if you're sitting there thinking, I feel overwhelmed and I would love more help on how I actually go from doing to leading marketing, like what packages, how do I even do this? What's the roles? What do I do within each of them? That is exactly what I share and teach and coach you on inside of Fractional CMO School. So how to define your role, how to set boundaries, how to structure client relationships, what your packages and pricing should be, how to sell those, all of the things. And there is so many real client examples. Now I hold your hand every step of the way. So if you are interested, visit fractional-cmo-school.com or the link below. Okay, I hope you liked today's video and I will see you next week.